working on a fundraising project of $60 million so that we can invest in the growth of new classical Christian schools. So we'll take an established school who has a proven model, who has a strong governance, and they have strong leadership, and then help them build a team and start planting schools in their area, 6, 8, 10, 12 more.
So you're the president of the Society for Classical Learning. What do you do as president?
So my responsibility is to oversee the execution of the organization's mission. So that means that I'm ensuring that everything internally is geared around fostering human flourishing by making classical Christian education thrive. So setting vision and trajectory for the organization, our strategic goals, leading our team, making sure that all the resources are allocated in a way that is executing those strategic priorities. A lot of what I'm doing right now is fundraising. It was a big responsibility to have. And then a big portion of it is also leading up with our board. So those are the primary responsibilities that I'm responsible for.
What impact would you say that your society is having?
Well, so, we have these 3 strategic modes of engagement. And one of those, the first one is institution building. So what we want to do is there's over 1,000 classical Christian schools in the country. And what we want to do is ensure that each one of those schools is going to be healthy, thriving, and enduring for generations. So we've created a framework for a thriving classical Christian school that's put together in our accreditation standards and indicators. And then we provide a bunch of support resources that helps each one of these schools reach their own aspirations of vision to become a thriving classical Christian school. So that looks like leadership, coaching and training, teacher training, resources for convening, consulting, working with boards. We have these playbooks that go along with each standard that gives them best practices so that they have everything that they need to become the best version of themselves that they can. So that's part one. I think we're growing in our effectiveness in doing that. We've had accreditation now. We're going into our 2nd year, and the feedback we've had on that is pretty remarkable. I think it is a true catalyst for schools becoming much better at what they do. The second category of things that we're doing is what we call a growth engine. And what we want to do is greatly expand the reach and access of classical Christian education to more and more families across the country. So we're working on a fundraising project of $60 million so that we can invest in the growth of new classical Christian schools. So we'll take an established school who has a proven model, who has a strong governance, and they have strong leadership, and then help them build a team and start planting schools in their area, 6, 8, 10, 12 more. So that's a long-term vision. It's about 200 schools, 100,000 students, and we're just getting underway with that project. And then the third category is around what we call culture maker. So what we believe is that what makes for a great classical Christian education informing young people also are the seeds of cultural renewal and the things that make for human flourishing. So we want to continue to advocate for those, partner with others, articulate those ideas, and hopefully not only just push for education reform, but for the ideas that make for a flourishing civilization.
Let's see if I understand this correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong. So your organization is outside of the classical Christian schools, but you help them externally to be able to carry out their own individual missions.
That's correct. So we're a membership organization. We have, a number of schools in our network who are paying dues, resources, and membership fees to be part of this network. And then we're helping them, support them in executing their mission.
Okay. So it's kind of like an external consultant that they pay for.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. What was the genesis of this organization, your organization?
Yeah. So when the classical Christian schools started to grow in the 90s, there were a couple of different groups that emerged for this very purpose of helping them, get support and resources to do what they do better. So there was one in Idaho that emerged called the Association of Classical and Christian Schools. And there was one on the East Coast called the became SCL, what was originally called the East Coast Consortium of Classical Christian Schools, but not a great name. So we changed that to Society for Classical Learning. So what we did originally was bring people together, have a conference, help figure out how to do this model of education, which was largely new to many of us on the front end. And over time, it grew into a much larger organization and serving a broader set of needs within the movement.
Okay. What would you say are the most successful classical Christian schools right now?
Well, I mean, I could name specific schools. I can tell you, I don't know if we do that necessarily, but there are schools that I think are doing some core things really well that make them in this category where we deem thriving. That's the term that we've chosen to use. That categorize them. One is they have absolute clarity in their mission. They know why they exist, and they orient all of their resources around doing that very clear mission. Two, all of them have really great leadership from the very top, both at the board level and at the executive leadership level. So that's a really challenging part of the movement as a whole right now, is finding really capable and qualified leaders for these key positions within schools. But it makes all the difference within an institution for them to be effective and stewarding the resources well and making sure that they're doing what they exist to do. I think, then what trickles down from that from a leadership perspective is the kind of people they hire to be in the classroom every day. Because at the end of the day in the school, the teacher is the most important, person in the school. They have to be able to embody the ideals that you're trying to teach. And that's going to be the place where all of the things that are most important in the life of the school happen. And if you have strong leadership, you'll find great teachers and you'll be able to recruit them effectively into your organization. I also think that, because schools are communities, the best of our schools within the movement are really dynamic in partnering with families and situating their school within the broader local community that they exist in. So having clarity about roles, about what parents are doing, inviting donors to be able to advance the mission of the school, seeing themselves as a participant in the flourishing of the communities that they're in. The schools that are doing really well, I think, have invested deeply in that part of their institution.
So if an individual is looking to be an administrator or take leadership position at a school, they would contact y'all and y'all could help facilitate matching them with a good school?
Yeah. Yeah. So we have on our site, as part of the membership, people can post jobs, and there's a lot of that sort of matchmaking that happens on our site. You'll have people who are looking for jobs and people who are looking for candidates. And so some of that happens, but we also have people who contact us and say, hey, look, I'm really interested in becoming a head of school. Do you know of other schools that are looking? And we help do a little bit of matchmaking there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then you also accredit these schools so that they have a certain standard.
Yes. So what we did was we spent about a year and a half looking at the existing accreditation models that are out there, and then talking to heads of school all across the country to say, if we were going to do accreditation the right way, and it wasn't going to be the root canal of all of education, because nobody wants to do accreditation. I didn't even want to do accreditation. What would you do and how would you do it different? How would it best serve your school and actually help you become a better school? Not just go through a mindless box checking, paper pushing, bureaucratic nightmare. So we took all of that collective feedback and used that to inform, I think, a version and a program for accreditation that's unique. So we have 4 parts to it. One is that it's principled. So no one wants someone from the outside to come in and prescribe everything that happens at your school. That's not what schools want. It's not what they need. So to give a principled approach, these are the things that work. These are the ideas. These are the core ideas of a classical Christian education. How do they sort of show up and apply in your own setting as a school? Those are the questions that need to be asked. The second one is aspirational. Most of the accreditation, is kind of this drive-by thing. You're either compliant or you're not. It doesn't create both a vision for something you could be and a means by which you can move towards that vision. So we wanted to create something that you could look at the standards and the indicators and say, oh man, we really want to be that kind of school, not just are we checking all the boxes today. The third thing is the T. So this is path, principled, aspirational, thorough. So we have a team of seasoned people who come in and who have led schools and who have a deep understanding of how the school should be functioning. And by doing it that way and having not just anybody who's willing to volunteer, which is what a lot of accreditation programs will utilize, someone who's close and someone who's willing. But we want to set a high bar for everybody who's coming in to assess from the accreditation assessment. And so that they have really thoughtful, intentional, informed feedback for that school and their particular needs and the things that they're doing well and the things that they need to grow in. We don't put a lot of weight on our accreditation program on a lot of paper pushing. So some accreditation programs do the opposite of what we do. So they'll ask you to do 100 hours of data collection and uploading documents and all of that. We don't do it that way. What we call self-study part of accreditation is actually pretty brief. Where we want to go deep is once we get on site and we're interacting with your team and we're understanding who you are and what some of the needs are and what we perceive needs to be pursued further, not just everything you've ever done at the school in a big bank of resources that doesn't really help and most of the team doesn't read anyway. The last part of it is hospitable. So most of accreditation teams, it's a painful process. People feel like they're having their papers graded and they're nervous about it. What we wanted to do was create a program, and this is what most of the heads told us, is could we create a program that actually felt like we're serving the school, we're helping them fulfill their mission, helping them to grow and aspire to be something that they envision as a better future for themselves, and do that with empathy, kindness, understanding, with intent of serving the leaders of the school. So those are the distinctives of the program, and I think why it's been so effective this far. I think the other part of it is that we spent 18 months getting input, not just about how the program itself can be effective, but the actual content of the standards and indicators from scholars, heads of school, seasoned teachers, for a very deep vetted process to come up with the things that are embedded in our assessment tool themselves from educators who would be the recipients of this program. So that's probably more than you needed there. We feel like we've created something distinct and really meaningful because of the way we went about creating it.
Would you say that accreditation programs as they're currently done are basically a scam?
Yes. Well, think about this. Okay, Cognia, which is the largest accreditor out there. They accredit all internationally. I think there's like 32,000 schools or something. It's like the Walmart of accreditation. And to be accredited within, in many cases, and our school was accredited by them for some years, is a really low bar. And you can't accredit 32,000 schools or whatever it is and do that with the level of intentionality and engagement that I'm talking about.
They're not visiting every school.
Well, they're sending teams, but it's more of the drive-by, approach. And they would push back against that, but I've been through it multiple times. I've experienced that. And many of the educators who've been through accreditation, even if it's not them, that's what they feel. And they don't feel like it's helping them, but it's something they feel like they have to do to satisfy this perception and some, bureaucratic box checking from colleges, universities, and families who know very little about it themselves.
So the other thing I want to talk to you about is the Alliance for the Renewal of Citizenship. I believe it's called ARC. So you're probably going to do a better job of explaining it. So can you explain a little bit to the audience? I think it's super interesting. I've been following it for a couple of years. What it is and then what your involvement with it has been.
Yeah. So this is the Alliance for Responsible Citizenship is Philippa Stroud and Jordan Peterson. So Philippa is a House of Lords member in the UK, and she has an incredible reach in terms of her influence. She's very thoughtful, articulate, deep convictions about the renewal of Western civilization, and aligned with Peterson in basically working from two different perspectives. She has been involved in the House of Lords for a number of years in English politics and working hard for conservative principles, within the country. And then met Jordan Peterson, who was on this tour doing all the speaking events and hearing over and over the same feedback and concerns from all the leaders he was talking to in multiple countries all over Eastern Europe about, the trajectory of their particular countries and the loss of basic values and decency, the loss of basic freedoms, the loss of any moral framework from which people are operating, and just really having a sense of urgency and need to do something about that. So I think they both have enough of this where they got together and said, what if we brought together these people in one large setting, international, and had facilitated a conversation around these big ideas that range everything from the arts to the economy and around these core common themes that they would say, we need a better story in Western civilization. And what are the things that brought us the level of freedom and prosperity that the West has enjoyed, but is in threat of losing? How can we facilitate a conversation around those big ideas? And they had an incredible lineup of people. There were 4,100 people there. This was in February, 92 countries, and some really great conversations happening. And not only that, they're not just wanting to get people together for a couple of days and talk. They actually have another part of their work, which is what they're calling forum, to take these pockets of people who are interested in actually doing something about these ideas and having them meet once a quarter in these small, what they call supper clubs, and the getting to know each other, working collaboratively to solve real problems that are related to the big themes that they care about and want to see real solutions for.
Yeah. And so how does one get involved in that?
Well, at the broadest level, you can essentially anybody can attend, the ARC conference. It's I think the next one is in June of 26. The forum dinners are by invite, and so it's not a secret club or anything. But I think they want people who are like-minded. So if you've attended them, like I have, you can invite other people in to participate. And then the format is they put everybody at these tables, you have a dinner, and you have a speaker, maybe 15, 20 minutes around some big idea, and then facilitate a Q&A. And then a lot of it is organic. I think it's intended to say, let's get people who care about the same things in the same room who can network and connect and then find ways to work together to do good things. So it's been very effective. It's very inspiring too. So we had David and Philippa come speak at our conference, the Society for Classical Learning Conference in summer of 24, and did a remarkable job casting vision for the renewal of culture. And that aligns well with what we're trying to do with the Society for Classical Learning.
You said that it's very inspiring. What would you say was the most inspiring experience or the most impactful thing for you that you got out of this?
Well, I think so. A couple of things. One is that, the vision that they've cast of it is possible to see things that we are concerned about in culture and to be able to actually do something about it. And what David Stroud has articulated is historically, here's how culture has been renewed. And he lays out these 5 categories, and he tells inspiring stories of other people who have had these kind of concerns, had generative ideas, and made some significant progress in advancing ideas they care about and getting significant support behind those ideas by working in ecosystems and dense networks of leaders to advance the thing that they care about. So he's kind of setting up a framework for if we really want cultural renewal, here's how it works. Here are the components that are necessary. And that's something we can do now. So it's hopeful. They've really avoided a lot of the cynical, jaded culture war terminology. And I think, yes, there's areas to be concerned about. Yes, there's some real bad things happening, but can we cast a vision for real positive change that is actualized and executed, and we actually solve problems and not just wail and moan and complain, but we're real aimed at meaningful change around the things we care about. It sounds a little trite, but it's real. It's real. They live that.
I wouldn't expect anything less from a member of the House of Lords.
Yeah.
But the wailing and moaning is kind of fun.
Yeah, feels good, just doesn't really move the needle.
So it seems to me that the biggest challenge that young people face, maybe everyone in modern society, is digital destruction. How do you address that problem with all these schools you're working with?
Well, what's pretty remarkable is when the anxious generation came out, Jonathan Haidt was advocating for, phone-free schools, and our schools had never went down that road. They never allowed them in the first place. And they've been very protective and I think cautious about overly saturating kids with digital anything and giving them real lived, experiences that are humane and not detached and overly mediated. And that's been really rich because I think we've been able to say, actually, he's right. And we've been saying that, and here to reiterate are the reasons why we care about this. And so I think that's really encouraging. And I think a lot of our families, who are concerned about this issue have learned from our schools about what are the principles and reasons why we'd even not give them unfettered access all the time to social media, or just to even having the device, accessible to their kids or teenagers 24/7 and what it's doing to them, but also with a positive aim towards, if we're going to form wise and virtuous human beings, then that's not going to happen in mediated terms. We're going to have to be intentional about what we do with our kids and not allowing this constant stream of things coming to them that we have no real understanding of what it is or what the content of it is or how it's shaping them, but be proactive in the kind of ways in which we're forming them, and be vigilant in that work. And I think that's one of the things, the beautiful things that's happened in our movement is a real positive vision for why do we educate? What is the purpose of education? And how have the content and the methodologies and the cultures in our schools moving towards creating and forming wise and virtuous human beings? And it's going to mean some temperance, some moderation on things that are helpful tools, but if we're not careful, can rewire and reshape us into something we would be terrified to see the outcome of.
Well said. Good for you, Eric. You're doing the right thing. It really makes my heart glad to hear that.
Well, good. I think there's a lot of resonance with that. I think that's the trajectory of it. Even outside of our more conservative circles, I think parents intuitively think this is not a good idea. Kind of like people have given the parallel with the cigarette. We'll look back and go, "Can't believe we did that."
Yeah. If there's a civilization that's capable of looking back, I think they will.
Yeah.
So, any last words for us, Eric?
Well, I'm full for the opportunity to do this. I think that, one of the things that I'm very passionate about is recovering good and true and beautiful things, giving those to our children in ways that we've lost. And so if anything, this renewal of classical Christian educations is recovering things that have been lost. And it's a beautiful thing to watch. If you walk in our schools and you see what's happening in the lives of these young people, their ability to articulate ideas, their understanding of the things that have shaped Western civilization, human civilization, their ability to articulate the big ideas and essential questions of what it means to be human, the access to the great resources of what made human beings wise and flourishing in the past, and to be able to apply those to real issues today of technology and AI and sexuality and all the other things that they encounter. We just desperately need this, to happen. And we've just lost sight of that entirely. So it's an honor to be able to work in an industry that is committed to doing that and see the great fruit of it.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.